So Apple might have tried to upstage OnePlus with the iPad announcement, but we think the 6T deserves a proper headline slot. This is our review of the OnePlus 6T. Let's be hypercritical to start. The OnePlus 6T has some reasonably minor aesthetic changes over the OnePlus 6, so if you do have the OnePlus 6, then this new model is unlikely to be the hardware leap that you're looking for. The design remains relatively similar and true to the look that we've come to know and love. I mean, a 2 phones per year schedule doesn't really allow for massive wholesale changes, but that's not a bad thing as the OnePlus 6 was a great looking smartphone. The internal hardware within the OnePlus 6T remains almost identical to the 6, so you get the Snapdragon 845, 6GB or 8GB of RAM, 128GB or 250GB of non-expandable storage. So far, so samey. OnePlus have told us directly that the removal of the headphone port has allowed for increased battery size and therefore a bigger battery capacity. This is the end of the headphone port on the OnePlus 6 devices unfortunately, but you will find a USB Type-C to headphone jack dongle in the box to aid the transition. There is still no wireless charging, but without giving OnePlus a pass, the renamed dash charging or fast charging is way better in my opinion. Being able to get 50% of power in less than 30 minutes is a massive bonus. But don't confuse that with this reviewer being an apologist for OnePlus. Wireless charging should really be added with the release of the OnePlus 7 and that is for certain. I'm talking yet more removals. Yes, the physical fingerprint reader at the back has disappeared and we do get an in-display fingerprint reader instead. I can deal with that as a compromise as the in-display reader is reasonably fast. Don't expect it to be as fast as a reader on the OnePlus 6 though, but all in all it's very neat and tidy. One of the only other major hardware changes is the decrease of the notch size. That does increase the screen to body ratio from 84% to 86%, which doesn't seem like much, but it's noticeable enough when jumping between the 6 and the 6T. Whilst the notch wasn't exactly massive for the OnePlus 6, the teardrop on the OnePlus 6T feels like the best implementation of the hardware feature so far. The notch now doesn't eat into the 1080p OLED display quite as much, it simply becomes almost unnoticed when in use. As for the display itself, it doesn't disappoint with no 2K panel. That isn't again a pass for OnePlus. We desperately want the company to include a higher resolution display. It's something we've criticised Apple for with their flagship devices, but I find it much harder to argue when the OnePlus 6T costs just under $550. As with any AMOLED worth its salt, the inky blacks and solid contrast does make the display a joy to look at. Viewing angles are also more than acceptable, but one thing I did notice was that the OnePlus 6T does seem to get a tiny bit brighter at full brightness in default calibration mode than the 6 does. I can see this when viewing directly side by side. Back to the notch though, and don't expect any 3D face scanning features. This is strictly a standard housing to a front facing camera. That means that you get the basic face unlocking feature, which is still really fast. It actually sometimes renders the in-display fingerprint reader pointless when the phone unlocks using your face before you can even get your finger scanned. Overall, the device is just incredibly well put together. It has a reassuring chunky feel and that alone makes me prefer holding it over the OnePlus 6. The soft curves on the backplate feel a little bit more pronounced and therefore more comfortable to hold and grip when compared to the 6 variant. Software-wise, Oxygen OS is still one of the very best OEM skins to grace the Android space, and whilst the gesture-style navigations are nothing new, they do feel a little bit smoother than in the previous Android Pie beta downloads with the OnePlus 6. You can revert to the pre-Pie navigation bar if you wish, which isn't possible on Pixel 3 devices, so props to OnePlus for allowing you to do this, as for some the on-screen nav bar is much better in day-to-day usage. One pretty big tweak to the way Oxygen OS operates is a new Smart Boost mode and is one of the few reasons beyond device longevity where I would recommend picking up the 8GB of RAM variant. Smart Boost uses device memory to improve boot times, which in turn is supposed to result in faster app launches. That said, the device does feel very fast, but I can't hand on heart say that I noticed if Smart Boost was really providing major benefits to my recently launched applications. Heading back to the notch for a second, if you're not a fan you can even disable it and have a darkened notification area reserved for notification icon reminders. It does eat into the display a little bit, but at least the option is still there. Those familiar with Oxygen OS or stock Android will feel right at home. I do love the ability to have darkened menus and change menu accents. It might not seem like much, but it's a powerful presentation tool that helps really make OnePlus devices your own. I think it's also testament to the software that I normally don't even bother using a third-party launcher when using a OnePlus device, such as the quality of Oxygen OS right out of the box. In terms of battery, honestly I hate making any major statements on battery life, but I did notice that the battery was slightly better on the 6T over the 6, with even essentially the exact same setup, apps installed and everyday usage. It's clear the larger battery capacity is giving me that little bit extra longevity on day-to-day usage. As for a ballpark figure, well I'd confidently state that you will expect at least a minimum of 4 to 5 hours of screen on time with standard usage, and in this instance I'd call streaming YouTube, music and plenty of social media browsing more or less the standard usage in 2018. As for the camera, there isn't really much to reveal about the camera capabilities, mainly as the setup remains identical to that found on the OnePlus 6. Software tweaks and refinements seem to be more of the aim of OnePlus's game with the 6T model this time around. Most notable of these software tweaks is the addition of the long exposure nightscape mode, which helps you take better nighttime photos. I'd have to say it's still a pretty mixed bag for the most part, and having already had some hands-on time with the feature, thanks to the Android Pie beta program on the OnePlus 6, there isn't much new here to shout about. Overall though, the camera application and the hardware help you take some decent photos given the right conditions. I've found that the telephoto lens is one that I began to use more and more, but with relatively mixed results. That might seem a little harsh, but I've never really been one to pick up a OnePlus phone and expect top tier camera performance. Even with some light criticism of the OnePlus 6T camera, I do really like the colours and the controls made available within the inbuilt camera app. You won't get lost within the camera application trying to find a tweak or setting, and the end result is more than adequate photos for everyday usage. What else can I say other than that this is a top tier smartphone in all but pricing and camera performance. At a smidgen under $550, I honestly can't recommend another new device more highly. That said, if you are a OnePlus 6 user, then you've actually got a few benefits of this device being released. The headphone port and the exact same specs making the upgrade feeling a little bit less cutting. Is this the best phone of the year? I suppose that depends on who you ask, but it's definitely one of the best value devices on the market, even with a few omissions. I'd love to know your thoughts though. Let me know what you think of the OnePlus 6T in the comments section below. Remember to visit the link in the description to read the full written review and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. This is Damien for 9to5Google saying thanks again for watching, and I will speak to you later.